245 days. It's been 245 days since the last full NFL Sunday, but the wait is over. In a matter of moments, the next generation takes center stage. C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson all take their first NFL snaps. Joe Burrow just got a $270 million bag, and now he'd love a division win in Ohio. Purdy versus Pickett in Pittsburgh? Perfect. And we ain't pulling this car over for 7 hours, but can Tennessee pull the car over in New Orleans? Some answers we get in just a matter of moments as who's ready for the first Sunday of the NFL's 104th season. That'd be us. Hi, everyone, and welcome to NFL Red Zone, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Great to have DraftKings back as our title sponsor. I'm Scott Hansen. This is season 15 for us at NFL Red Zone, but we know some of you might be watching for the very first time. If that's you, let me make you a promise. We're going to love watching football together. Today on the show, 5 teams have new head coaches. All of them will debut on NFL Red Zone. 8 teams have a new starting quarterback from what they expected at this point last year. All of those teams are on Red Zone. The menu of games kicking off in a matter of moments looks like this. 8 games in the early window. Carolina's in Atlanta, division matchup in the NFC.
Boys, we are back. Welcome to the pod. We are back. The SGS League is back. I am your host, Jordan. Hopefully that red zone of 7 hours of commercial-free football intro got you fucking fired up for what we are about to do this year. I don't know about y'all, but I am fired up more this year than any other year. I was going to use my other mic, but unfortunately, I do not know where the fucking cord went for it. So I am down and out. I had to buy a new one, so I should have my other mic working for the next pod. But we're just going to have to use my actual headset today. But boys, welcome back, man. I am so pumped to be able to do this pod with y'all again. Definitely going to be a great year. It's going to be a great draft. I cannot wait for draft weekend. It's going to be a great time. All the way down in Ho Chi Town. Feel like I live there at this point with how much I've been down there already this year. But yes, boys, I am fired up. So today in the pod, basically we're going to be going over some mock drafts, some who's going to be like some of the top picks this year, my projections for some of these players. Definitely not going to be just looking at ESPNs. We're probably going to go check out some other websites too, see what some other websites are definitely thinking on who to pick and stuff like that. But for right now, I just have ESPN since we use ESPN as our preferred draft or fantasy football league in general, because there is multiple other ones to use, like Sleeper, which Sleeper's been growing a whole bunch. I have a couple fantasy football leagues that I'm going to be using that we use Sleeper for them. So I used Sleeper last year. Sleeper's really solid, but you can't ever go wrong with ESPN. ESPN's been the one that I've been using for years. Well, we've all been using just specifically for this draft for years, so I never have an issue with that whatsoever. But yeah, let's get right into it. First off, I want to say thank you to everyone who tunes into this fantasy football pod. Try my best to put a lot of work into this, try to do a lot of research, stuff like that. I will say I might be a little rusty. I haven't done a lot of research. I've definitely done some, but I haven't done like the full go-to with the research. I've been pretty busy with work. I've been trying to get this real estate shit going. Pretty close to getting that done. So, but we'll definitely get right into this. I do want to say that, so looking at the rankings and projections that ESPN has, I would say that these are pretty accurate with pretty much a lot of the fucking mock drafts on the board. There might be a few differences, but obviously I think the number one pick is McCaffrey right now. McCaffrey's just a solid running back, has been for the last couple of years, as long as he's healthy, which he stayed relatively healthy last year, which was really good, which is a good sign. He is coming off a injury during practice, I believe, from what they're saying. I don't even know if it has this. Okay, here we go. So it was a calf injury. He's unlikely to suit up. So honestly, he probably wasn't going to suit up for any preseason action in general. But from what it's saying, it looks like he is going to be good to go at the start of the week, or the start of season one, or game one for the season. I think he's going to be good to go. I did see a stat that he is turning, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to be 28. How old is Christian McCaffrey going to be at the start of the season? Okay, so he will be 28. And according to a few stats that I've seen, relatively with running backs when they turn age 28, a lot of them typically have down years once they turn 28. Now, obviously, McCaffrey's in his own ballpark. He could still have an amazing season. And obviously, with Vegas, they're saying that the 49ers are going to have the number one offense in the NFL this year. Um, Definitely a number one pick, 100%. You do just know with his injury past that it is always a risk, but the good news is with last year, he was hardly injured at all. So that's a huge deal right there on its own. But as long as he stays healthy, I think he's going to be number one regardless. He dropped 391 fantasy points last year. I mean, he almost had 2,000 yards, or did he? I think he did have 2,000 total yards if you add that up. Yeah, 2,000 total yards with rushing and receiving. So, I mean, the guy is an absolute monster. 21 touchdowns total on the year. He's just a monster. He's consistent. Whenever he's healthy, he will always produce. So, definitely going to be the number one pick, no doubt. Now we look at number two, which is CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb, explosive offense. He's looking like he's the number one wide receiver going in a lot of these drafts. You could make a case for Tyreek Hill. You could make a case for Justin Jefferson still. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase. Those are definitely the top five wide receivers going this year. CeeDee Lamb, amazing year last year. Dropped 403 fantasy points. He had 14 TDs. 1749 reception yards, which is insane. So yeah, he's definitely looking like a clear-cut number one, but not necessarily so. There's definitely some wiggle room to obviously put Tyreek Hill up there, which Tyreek Hill is getting up in age, but I don't think it matters with him. I think he still has a couple good years left in him. I will say that Amon-Ra St. Brown might have a really good year as well. I think the Lions are projected 2 in offense this year, according to Vegas. And so he's definitely going to probably have an amazing year as well. He's looking like he's going to be, in my eyes, he might be clear-cut number 2, but you could obviously make a case for Tyreek Hill as well. Now, obviously, McCaffrey's clear-cut number 1 running back, but a lot of hype regarding Breece Hall this year. If Aaron Rodgers stays healthy, he's going to have a really productive year. He's definitely going to be getting, I think, more involved in the passing game than he did last year. I mean, he's basically going number 2 in a lot of drafts, running back wise, and projected number 3 overall according to ESPN. Definitely a lot of hype coming in for him this year. I will say that he will definitely have a great year if he stays healthy 100%. I do like the Jets offense, but they still have a lot of things to figure out. I mean, this is going to be their first full year with Aaron Rodgers, since obviously Aaron Rodgers tore his ACL last year. I believe it was his ACL. But as long as if they start cooking on offense, he's going to have a very productive year, and I could see why he is going as high as he is. He's a young guy. He's got a lot of juice. So Bijan Robinson, 4, which is very interesting. I will say, obviously, he's got a lot of potential. We saw it last year. He didn't really produce as much as everyone was hoping for last year. I believe Carson had him last year. And he definitely had some down games. He had some great games. Really, the Falcons just were using Tyler Algier a lot. Tyler Algier was kind of involved in the offense, and I know the Falcons have been saying that they are still going to have Algier involved in the offense. So that is a little bit scary, drafting him super high. But the potential's there, and I could see why he is going so high in a lot of these mock drafts. I mean, he's definitely going to be a stud next year. It just all depends on how much Tyler Algier is going to be involved with this offense as well, because there's obviously might be a little bit of disappointment going with that. Kirk Cousins coming in as the starting QB as well. So he could also get more involved with the passing game since he now has a pretty solid QB passing to him, which last year their QBs were just terrible. They couldn't get anything going on the passing game hardly at all. So yeah, Bijan Robinson, he's got a lot of potential. A little bit of I will say he does have a little bit of a risk drafting. I will say that because you just don't know how much Algier is going to get involved in this offense. We won't know until the season starts. But they have been saying that Tyler Algier is going to be a big part of their offense for this next year. So we'll see how all that goes. Hopefully it's not like it was last year, and Bijan can just be the clear-cut number one. But we'll see what happens with all that. We talked about Tyreek Hill a little bit. That could obviously be the number one wide receiver again coming into this year. 17, or he had almost 1,800 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. Obviously the clear-cut number one in Miami. Tua just got a bag, so Tua is going to be passing for him for a long time. But yeah, he is going to be 30 this next year, which he's getting up in age, but it doesn't really matter. His speed's still there. He's still looking great in training camp. He's still one of the top wide receivers in the league, and it's going to show because, I mean, he's such a deep threat. He's amazing he's just so quick. But yes, I think that he is going to have a great year regardless. Now, since he is getting up in there in age, obviously you do have to worry about injuries with him. But he's going to go high regardless. And, I mean, I would draft him personally still. I mean, I had him last year. He played amazing for me. So can't say I would not want him on my team at all. And with how good the Dolphins' offense is as well. Then we got Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase coming off a little bit of a down year just because of the fact that Burrow got hurt. And he did have a couple injuries as well. I do think he's obviously Joe Burrow's favorite target. T. Higgins is still on that team too. But I don't really think it's going to really bother him as much. Chase is going to be good. As long as Joe Burrow is healthy, that's the risk. Because if Joe Burrow's not there, then obviously he could have a couple down games. But he was still the clear-cut number one, even without Joe Burrow. And I'm, for some reason, forgetting their backup QB's name that they had. It's just not coming to me. But he wasn't a bad backup. He played great last year in his own right, too, and gave them a chance to make the playoffs. They unfortunately fell short, but Chase, I think, is still going to be – he's going to be up there. I don't know if I would have him over Amon-Ra, honestly. I think Amon-Ra, me personally, I would take Amon-Ra over Jamar Chase, but that's just me. And speaking of Amon-Ra, he's actually next up on the board. Definitely number one with the Lions coming in. Lions are going to have a really good offense this year. They're passing, their running game. They're going to be really solid overall. They're going to be a dangerous team this year. Amon-Ra, he had 1,550 receiving yards, 330 fantasy points. His projections are lower this year, which is fine. I mean, they're going to do that, but he could still have an amazing year. Definitely do like Amon-Ra a lot in this offense. He's one of my favorite wide receivers to pick this year. He's just such a stud. But yeah, no issues with him whatsoever. I think that he's definitely going to be a top pick. You can't go wrong with Justin Jefferson. So Justin Jefferson's next. Had injury last year, so he missed a lot of time, which was the first time in his career. he's still going to produce. I believe Sam Darnold, he is going to probably be the starting QB coming up this season. So that's a little bit of an issue. No Kirk Cousins, so he doesn't really have like a solidified, solid QB passing to him. But he's still going to be involved in this offense heavy. He's going to be getting a lot of catches. He's going to get a lot of receptions for sure, which will get him up in these PPR leagues. He's going to be heavily involved in this offense. Their offense is going to be interesting to see, though. We don't really know how it's going to be. We don't really know how the running back situation is going to be either. I believe their starting running back is going to be who? I got to look it up real quick. I can't remember who their starting running back is going to be. Let's see. So they have really Aaron Jones. That's who they got. So they got Aaron Jones, who is most likely going to be their starting running back. We'll see. Ty Chandler is definitely probably going to be second. And they got Myles Gaskin too. I didn't know that. But yeah, Aaron Jones, obviously with his, this is going to probably be a really pass-heavy offense. So I really do think Justin Jefferson is going to be getting he's going to be getting all the targets in the world. Doesn't really have a lot of like competition when it comes to getting. We'll check out the wide receivers real quick too. I do want to see who they have wide receiver wise. So I mean, obviously they do still have Jordan Addison, who could have a good year as well. Brandon Powell. They still got T.J. Hawkinson. We don't know exactly. I don't know if T.J. Hawkinson's going to be good to go at the start of the year just because he had that late season injury. But we'll see what happens with that. Next up is Jonathan Taylor. When Jonathan Taylor came back last year, he produced. I mean, he looked like Jonathan Taylor. He had an amazing year. Obviously, the Colts offense is going to be interesting to see this year. I believe that who is their starting QB, man? I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm not too fully prepared knowing all these teams exactly. Anthony Richardson. Oh my gosh, dude. I should have known that. We'll see how that goes. Obviously, Anthony Richardson is a really good running quarterback, so that might hurt Jonathan Taylor a little bit, but that doesn't really matter. He's still going to be getting a lot of carries. He's going to be a stud. I think he's definitely projected to have a really good year. Him and Anthony Richardson both. That's going to help open up the offense a whole bunch, having both of them running the ball a lot. So that's going to be really fun to watch. I'm excited. We got A.J. Brown next. A.J. Brown, obviously number one wide receiver for the Eagles. Compete with Devontae Smith. And then you got Saquon, who is also a really good pass-catching running back coming into this offense. So definitely looking really good. Fifth in receiving yards, provided a cool 17 points per game. Eighth among wide receivers. He dominated over a 6-game stretch early on. 5 touchdowns from week 3 through 8, then reaching 100 yards in just one of the final 9 contests. But this is still an elite offense. He's still going to be a really good wide receiver. Definitely going high on mock drafts. He's going to be really good this year, man. I really do think the Eagles' offense is going to be really good, especially having Saquon now. Saquon's a huge pickup for him. And speaking of Saquon, he's next up on the mock draft. Going away from the Giants, Saquon's finally in a really, really good offense after having a little bit of a down year last year just because of obviously how bad the Giants' offense was last year. No Daniel Jones pretty much the whole year. I mean, this is going to be fun to watch, man. Saquon going pretty high in a lot of these mock drafts. There might be a few guys below him that I might take before him, but I mean, just because of his potential and how amazing he is, how much talent he has, I mean, he's still going to be up there with the running backs, and he could put up some 2022 numbers, you know. He's going to be really good. Hopefully his health is fine. because obviously health is always a concern with him. It has been throughout his whole career, but um, he hasn't been in an offense like this, so this is going to be fun to watch to see how he produces. And that's exactly why he's going so high in a lot of these mock drafts. We got Garrett Wilson up next. Garrett Wilson definitely going high just because obviously Aaron Rodgers, if he's healthy, he's going to have the best QB of his whole career passing to him. So this is why he is going really high in a lot of these mock drafts. He's a stud in his own right. And we're going to see something we haven't really seen from him this year is to see how he produces with a really good quarterback, which he's obviously going to be number one with the Jets. Coming off a little bit of a down year just because he still had a great year, but coming off a little bit of a down year just because obviously the whole QB situation with the Jets was just a shit show. But yes, I think he's definitely going to be clear-cut number one. Him and Rodgers. We'll see how their chemistry is. Obviously, they've been kind of fighting a little bit in preseason, which isn't a bad thing. Definitely getting vocal with each other. Shows their passion. But I think he's definitely going to be producing a lot this year. As long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt somehow again this year and isn't under center, then obviously him going high is a little bit of a concern for whoever picks him. But as long as Aaron Rodgers is healthy, he should overall have a great year. Mike just turned off, which I knew was going to happen eventually. Next up, Puka. So Puka is kind of turning to number one for the Rams offense. He did get hurt during training camp. They are saying that he will be ready for game one. He's no threat of missing the Rams week one game at Detroit. But a lot of people are a little concerned with him getting hurt already. So obviously Cooper Kupp's still there. But he is going down the ladder of his career, so he is getting up there in age. So Puka's obviously going over him all day. He's going to probably have an amazing year as long as he stays healthy, as long as Matthew Stafford stays healthy. His volume did dip a little bit whenever Cooper Kupp did return, but obviously he's going to be number one going in. Stafford and Kupp still have that great connection. I think Kupp in his own right might still have a great year. The Rams offense is going to be fun to watch. I think they're going to be really, really good this year, especially if Kyron Williams stays healthy too. So Puka's a solid option. He's going to probably have a really good year. He surprised everyone last year with how great he played. He was one of the biggest surprises of last year. So next up we got Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously was fighting carries with David Montgomery last year. Definitely the passing running back on this offense, the pass catcher for this offense for sure. He is a stud, and I think he is definitely going to have a boost of productivity this year, and I think Montgomery's going to have a little bit of a down year compared to last year. I think Gibbs is going to be more heavily involved in this offense this year, and that's why he's going over a lot of these clear-cut running backs. Yes, that committee is definitely a little concerning because some people don't like committee drafting running backs that have a committee, but he showed that he could produce in a committee regardless. He's going to be really good. He was 25th among running backs in touches, which can be a little concerning for some people to draft him, but with just how good he is, he's 22 years old. He's a clear top 10 running back for sure. He should have a lot more production last year compared to last year. So, but I will say I probably would take Kyron Williams over him. Obviously, I think the reason why Kyron Williams is below him is just because of his injuries, obviously. But man, when Kyron Williams was healthy, did he produce? Dude was out. He was getting a lot of touchdowns last year. He had 15 total TDs, third among running backs. He's obviously clear-cut number one in that offense. He averaged nearly 22 touches per contest in his 12 games played, 24 fantasy points per game from weeks 12 through 17. My goodness, the guy just produced so much. Obviously, they do have Blake Corum, dude from Michigan. So we'll see if he gets involved in this offense. He might be number 2 running back for them. But Kyron Williams is going to be solid, definitely going to be scary. And when he was in, he produced. And he was a big surprise this last year as well. So very excited to see how he plays. Now this is a very interesting one. Is Isaiah Pacheco going 16? Uh, he's a very good running back. Obviously, this Chiefs offense is going to be really good. They have a little bit of a more deeper wide receiver core from last year. Them bringing in Hollywood Brown, them bringing back Rashee Rice, which I don't think is going to miss any time for that whole situation. I don't think his court date's till like December. So he's definitely not going to get suspended, I don't think, to start the year. That's at least what they're saying. And then obviously drafted Xavier Worthy too, the speedster, who's been looking really good in mini camp, training camp, and all that. So, yeah, this is very interesting seeing Isaiah Pacheco going up. They think he's going to have a better year compared to last year. He's handled a lot of the goal line carries. He's 16 and 23 in a goal to go situations. He's definitely the primary rusher. He's going to be definitely in the second round pick for sure. But I mean, there's a few wide receivers I'd much rather take than him. I feel like, especially like for example, I mean Chris Olave, I'd probably take over Pacheco. Olave had a great year last year. I had him in one of my other leagues, and he played phenomenal. He's obviously clear-cut number 1 with the Saints. He's going to have most likely another 80 catch, 1,000-yard plus season. He's a stud. There's really no other wide receivers that are going to compete for number 1 there whatsoever. So he's going to have probably a really good year. Obviously would like to see him maybe get a few more touchdowns compared to last year, but those receptions are always going to be there. He'll be good. He'll be really good. I like Olave. Derrick Henry up next. Derrick Henry switching over to the Ravens. Is going to be in a way more elite offense now compared to the Tennessee Titans. He is getting up there in age, but he hasn't really shown like a down year yet, which you could say for last year it might have been somewhat of a down year for him, but he still posted 12 touchdowns, 1167 in rushing yards, and now he's going to have Lamar Jackson as his QB, and so this is going to be a dynamic backfield attack. He's not going to be giving you receiving numbers, which is kind of the concern with him in the PPR leagues, is he's not really obviously going to be a pass catcher, but it's going to be interesting to see how this backfield goes. He's clear cut, probably going to be number 1 on the running back board, obviously, but with how many running backs they have, they're going to be throwing some more running backs in there. But yeah, we'll kind of see how Derrick Henry goes in his late years. He's definitely still going to be. This is an offense that he's never been a part of before, so this is going to be fun to watch. We got Travis Etienne next. Believe is it Bigsby? I think it was some. They were saying there was some running back that they say is going to probably be more involved in the offense in Jacksonville. Let's see, running backs for Jacksonville. Not 2016. Tank Bigsby, that's who it was. Yeah. So they were saying something about Tank Bigsby being a little bit more involved in the offense this year, which I don't really know how much that's really going to affect his production. But Etienne's been a great back. He had an amazing year last year. He had a lot of touchdowns. He didn't really, his average yards 3.8, which is a little bit down compared to some of these other running backs that are going before him, which is why he's kind of in the second round kind of pick right now. But he's going to probably repeat the same thing that he did last year. He's still going to be able to probably be the red zone guy going in. And he's still young, so he's definitely going to be up there. We'll see if Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, we'll see how healthy he is this year, but I think he's going to be playing very well for them this year. Travis Etienne, solid pick. Uh, Next up, you got Michael Pittman. Definitely going to be up there in production. He's definitely the clear-cut number one. Uh, he is definitely going into his fifth season. He's got 4 touchdowns, which is a little concerning from this last year. His targets are going to be there. I mean, 109 receptions is pretty wild, and uh, Anthony Richardson being the QB is going to be interesting to see how he plays with him. Anthony Richardson looked really good last year when he was healthy. So, Michael Pittman's going to be pretty good, I believe. He's definitely a solid pick. Now we got our first rookie on the board. We got Marvin Harrison. So Marvin Harrison's already projected to have an 1,000-yard year. 83 receptions, 1120 yards, 6 TDs is his projection. Polished playmaker with elite NFL bloodlines. I mean, obviously his dad was a stud with the Colts. Had one of the best years any wide receiver could have. It's looking like he is most likely going to be their number one option. Kyler Murray coming into, going to be feeding him the ball like crazy. I'm really excited to see how this offense is. This might be one of the sleeper teams in the NFL season this year if they end up producing with the healthy Kyler Murray. So, yeah, Marvin Harrison looking like he's going to be the clear-cut number one. You got Trey McBride as well. This team's going to be very scary. I definitely think that he is going to be pretty good. And that's why he is the first rookie going on a lot of these boards, just because of the QB he has. We'll see how he plays this year. He's going to, obviously, any rookie's a risk, but with how he looked with Ohio State, I mean, he's a stud. And his TD numbers, I mean, it says he's going to project at 6 TDs. I could see that going at double digits. So, especially with how many TDs he got with Ohio State. So, Devontae Adams up next. Definitely clear-cut number one with the Raiders. He was 10th among wide receivers in fantasy points. He got off to a hot start. Obviously he had a mid-year dip in targets just before Josh McDaniels was dispatched, and then he finished strong. 5 games of 14-plus fantasy points at the end of the year. He's going to be 31 this next upcoming year, but he'll definitely be really solid. This Raiders offense is a little bit of concern. They're not looking like they're going to be all that great, but he's still going to be getting that high target share. He had 103 receptions last year, 8 TDs. So Devontae Adams is still a stud. He's going to be up there. He's definitely a solid pick. Now here's another guy who is being projected to have an amazing year compared to last year, is Drake London. Since they have Kirk Cousins is going to have a elite wide receiver. He's going to probably make Drake London an elite wide receiver in this league. Could be one of the top wide receivers in the league this year, with knowing Kirk Cousins and how he helps with a lot of wide receivers, such as Justin Jefferson, become such a stud, which Justin Jefferson is a stud in his own right. He still will have a great year, but his potential is definitely going up with having Kirk Cousins as his QB now. So that's why he's going a little bit higher in these draft boards. He's going to be really good this year, man. I like him a lot. He's definitely a sleeper this year who he could have a top 5 wide receiver year, which I could be crazy saying that, but he could, just because I think he's definitely going to be clear-cut number one. Doesn't have a lot of competition. He's definitely going to probably take a jump this year, and that's why he's going very high. Joe Mixon up next. Now on the Texans. Joe Mixon actually had a really good year last year. He's definitely getting up there with his veteran appeal. He's still young, though. He got in this league at a young age, so he's still young with how many years he's been in this league already. He's gonna be on an elite offense with the Texans. I mean, he already was on an elite offense with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, but this is going to be fun to watch to see how he fits in with this offense. I feel like he's definitely going to help with the rushing attack for sure. Um, we'll see how he is when it comes to his production. I think he's going to be a really good pick. Joe Mixon is always kind of a risky pick, regardless, but he's still going to put up the numbers. I like him a lot this year. It's just going to be interesting to see how this Texas team is. They were the surprise of last year in a way with how great C.J. Stroud played. Their offense is going to be very scary. So I think he's going to be really good. That is why he's going very high. Next up, we got James Cook. James Cook, it's looking like they're saying he's going to have a down year compared to last year. James Cook definitely had some on and off games. He was an RB12 in fantasy last season, ranked 4th in the league in rushing yards. So they got a new offensive coordinator. From weeks 11 through 18, he averaged an impressive 19.6 touches, 16 fantasy points per game. He is definitely the undisputed leader of the Bills, but we can expect a similar workload from him in 2024. He is safely drafted as a high-end RB2. Obviously, this offense might take a little bit of a dip this year just because their passing attack might not be as good as last year. They lost Gabriel Davis. They lost Stephon Diggs. So there's not really any clear-cut number one wide receiver for him. This is going to be interesting to see how that passing attack is. But I think James Cook, with that passing attack taking a little bit of a dip, he might honestly be more involved with this passing attack. And obviously Josh Allen is a stud. So he's going to be getting him involved, I feel like, a little bit more in this passing attack. And I think he might have a little bit more productive year, which they're not saying he will, but me personally, I think he will be more involved in this passing offense. So he's a really good pick this year, I think. I think he's going to definitely be getting a lot of production. Next up is a little bit of a risky pick, but whenever he was healthy, he put up some of the most insane numbers we've ever seen from a running back. He was so impressive. Led the league in yards per carry. Devon Achane, 7.8. This was among those with a minimum of 100 attempts. He was in one. I mean, obviously the Dolphins' offense is so elite. One red flag is Achane is his durability. Obviously, he missed 6 games last season, but he remains lethal with the football in his hands. He averaged 17.3 fantasy points per game despite only 12 touches, which is just insane how productive he was. But yes, obviously he'll be splitting the touches with Raheem Mostert, so he's obviously going to be in a committee, which obviously a lot of people are concerned about that. But whenever he's playing, he's just so productive, and I'm not too sure if he's going to be that way this year. I think he did beef up a little bit. He was a little bit smaller for running backs last year. He's got so much upside, so obviously comes with a little bit of concern with his injuries and with the committee, obviously. But man, what a rookie year he had. So he's just because of how productive he was with the touches he had, that's why he's going higher in a lot of these drafts, and he could have an amazing year. So we'll see what happens with him. Next up, we got Nico Collins, looking like he's going to still be the clear-cut number one with Stephon Diggs coming in with the Texans. I will say the Texans, I mean, gosh, they have 3 solid wide receivers. So this is what's going to be interesting, is to see how it all splits up. But Nico Collins, according to all these mock drafts, he's still going to be the clear-cut number one with them. He broke out last year, had an amazing year. Finished 8th in receiving yards, second only to Tyreek Hill in yards per route. He did. So now it's going to be interesting to see how Stephon Diggs fits in this offense, if he's going to take a little bit of a dip this year, but we'll see what happens. This is going to be pretty interesting to watch. But according to them, he's still going to be C.J. Stroud's favorite target. So we'll see how that goes. We got Mike Evans up next. Mike Evans, getting up there in age. He's still going to be Baker's favorite target coming in. He had an amazing year last year. I mean, 79 receptions, 1255 yards, 13 touchdowns. That's what was the big thing. He had a lot of touchdowns last year. Was Baker's favorite red zone target when it came to all the wide receivers there, like Godwin. Third most receiving yards, and that's the second highest TD total of his career. Evan's 7th place finish and 7 fantasy points marked his best finish since 2016. He's never finished a campaign worse than 23rd. So he's always been consistent. Hey, he's still going to have a great year. And Baker loves passing to him. So he's projected to have a little bit more of a down year compared to last year, but he's still going to be the favorite red zone target coming in. He might be in double digits with the TDs. Got Travis Kelce up next. Now this is going to be interesting to see who's going to have a better year. Is it going to be him or is it going to be Laporta? I have obviously Travis Kelce is Mahomes' favorite target. He's still going to produce very well. He's getting up there in age. Best tight end in fantasy football history. He's had 21, 16.7 points since 2016. And yeah, compared to last year he had a good year, but a little bit of down here for his sake. I mean, he still had a great year for any tight end to have, but it's going to be interesting to see how Mahomes kind of keeps this offense on point with all the different wide receivers they have now. So Travis Kelce is still going to be heavily involved in this offense. Since he is getting up there in age, you are concerned about the injuries, but a lot of people are taking Kelce and Laporta number one, and it's very close right now. So I don't think you ever go wrong with Kelce. He's always a safe pick. Next up, we got Rachaad White, running back for the Buccaneers. He was RB4 in fantasy scoring last season, racking up some solid rushing yards, showing his receiving skills as well. They've made minimal changes behind White on the depth chart this offseason. So he's clear-cut number one. They did draft a running back, Bucky Irving. He could put in a little bit of work, could be RB2 for this team, but he has a lot of value. For sure, Rachaad White had a really strong late season push as well. Nine touchdowns on the year. This Tampa Bay offense has had a really good year last year, so we'll see how he plays. They're projecting him to have a little bit of a down year compared to last year, but I feel like they are doing that for a lot of these players. So Sam Laporta, so he is obviously going. He finished the season as tight end one. He is a young tight end, trusted target, ranking top 5 in routes, targets, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, and end zone targets. He's going to have a great year, I believe. You could take him over Travis Kelce just because he's obviously younger and he looked amazing last year. So he's going to have a great year. DK Metcalf going at number 32. He is going to be obviously clear-cut Seahawks number one, we think. But obviously he has a little bit of committee. Jackson Smith-Njigba is starting to come up on this offense. But DK is still a beast. He's probably going to have a great year. He's had 66 receptions for 14 yards, 8 TDs. He's going to look really good. I think they don't use him rushing whatsoever. His upside's overwhelming and figures to be clearly baked into the top 20 positional ADP. So this is the second consecutive season of more than 1,000 receiving yards. So they're expecting him to have the same next year. Next up, we got Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, 29 years old. He finished as RB11 last year. His production is always going to be there. Keandre Miller supposedly has not been having a good offseason. Not really the best mini camp, supposedly. Taysom Hill is also probably going to eat into Kamara's production, but he's 9th in the league in red zone touches. Should be a go-to option, but the days of him being one of the first running backs off the board are over. He's a low-end RB1 this year, but he's still going to be productive. He's still one of the top running backs in the league, so definitely getting up there in age, but I think he's still going to be very productive for the Saints offense. Next up, we got Stephon Diggs, and what a move for him to go to the Texans. It's going to be very interesting to see how he plays in a new offense this year with C.J. Stroud. Could he end up being number one option for the Texans? We'll see, but I think C.J. Stroud still is going to favor Nico Collins a little bit. But they are projecting him to have a down year. Still clear, they're saying that he's going to be a wide receiver too. So it's his 10th year in the NFL. I think it's just because of the fact of his age and everything. They think Nico Collins will have a better year, but we'll see how all that goes. Real quick, I'm going to turn this fan on. I'm getting a little toasty. Um, but yeah, this is going to be interesting to see how he plays this year in a new offense. Next up, we got Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs going over to the Packers, going into an elite offense. He wasn't in an elite offense last year, so going with Jordan Love as his QB. You got A.J. Dillon still there. A.J. Dillon might still see a little bit of production, but obviously Josh Jacobs is the clear number one. He's reserved to his go-to back role and finished second in touches per game. However, despite that volume, he was RB17 in fantasy points per game. Due to his career lows, that's a reason why he's going a little bit lower, but he's still 26 years old. He's still relatively young, replacing Aaron Jones. So, I mean, he had 50 targets in each of the past 3 seasons. So he'll get involved in this passing game for sure. He's going to have a heavy workload with this offense, and that's why he's projected to have a better year, being in a better offense this year. Next up is Brandon Ayuk. So obviously there's a lot of talk about what is going to happen with Brandon Ayuk this year. Is he going to still be with the 49ers? Is he going to get traded? Unfortunately, my Patriots aren't going to fucking take him. Apparently his agent and him were not interested, which understandably so. Our offense is predicted last, according to Vegas. So would have been nice to have him on the Patriots, but unfortunately he has no interest, which I don't blame him. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him. I mean, if he stays with the 49ers, he's clear-cut going to stay here, but who knows what team he's going to be on. So obviously he's a risk coming in. Probably by the time of the draft, a decision might be made, but we just don't know yet with him. He's up on the board, but I mean, he had a great year last year, 1342 yards, 7 TDs, 75 receptions. So, I mean, if he stays with this 49ers offense, which is projected number 1 this year, he's going to be solid wide receiver too. So, we'll see what happens with him, depending on where he goes, or if he just stays with the 49ers, we'll see. But just a lot of drama going on with that. Right now, he's just kind of in a bubble. We don't know where he's going to go yet, if he goes anywhere. So, next up, Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith, he surpassed 1,000 receiving yards for second consecutive season and enters his 4th NFL season with secure 3-year contract extension. He's going to be in a statistical success in a load offense with Saquon, A.J. Brown, but he's probably not going to see top target share with A.J. Brown still being there, but he had a career best 9.5 yards per target. God, I can't talk. And offers a high fantasy floor, having scored double-digit games in 11 games last season. Obviously a fringe wide receiver too. Yeah, he'll definitely still be heavily involved in this offense, and with how elite the offense the Eagles has, he's always a safe pick to have for sure. Next up, we got DJ Moore. So we finally got our first Bears player in the board here. He just got paid. He saw 15 red zone targets, good enough for the 6th most of that position. He'll look to continue his NFC North dominance. But I think the reason he's got a little bit of a down slope coming into this year is because now they have Keenan Allen. They just drafted rookie Rome Odunze and Caleb Williams at QB. So we're going to see how this offense looks. They look really good on paper, but fantasy-wise, it's going to be interesting to see how these targets are split with these 3 wide receivers. So, but he is going number 1 according to all these Bears wide receivers so far, just because of how much Keenan Allen's getting up there in age, and we just don't know Rome Odunze's potential in the league yet. So we'll see how all that goes. He's got top 10 talent though. he's definitely got top 10 talent for sure, and he had an amazing year last year. So next up, we got Jalen Waddle. Jalen Waddle always going to go high just because of his potential on this offense. He had 12 TDs, or not 12. He had 4 TDs last year. Sorry, I read that wrong. Had another 1,000-yard year. He's averaged 7 targets, 14.7 fantasy points per game. He's been very efficient over that time frame, catching 66.5% of his targets. He'll be heavily involved in this offense still, obviously. Still going to be second most in targets on this team. Fringe wide receiver, too, for sure. Just being in an elite offense, he's always a great pick to have. I don't see the offense dipping whatsoever as long as Tua is healthy, so as long as he's healthy as well. We got Kenneth Walker next up. Kenneth Walker, obviously the clear-cut number 1 with Seattle. We're going to be interested to see Zach Charbonnet, how involved he's going to be in this offense this year too. He did struggle with efficiency. His receiving chops also remain in question as he drew fewer targets and posed a lower catch rate than the aforementioned Charbonnet, but he's still going to be the lead back in Seattle. He should still put up RB2 numbers as long as his health is there. But yeah, we'll see how he goes this year. They're projected him to have a better year compared to last year. So Kenneth Walker, solid pick. Next up, Cooper Kupp. Obviously, you got to put Cooper Kupp up there just because of his past. Obviously, I think he's starting to be turning into the wide receiver 2 on this offense, but if he stays healthy, he is still a solid pick. His production is always going to be there. He missed the first 4 weeks with that hamstring and has now missed 13 games the past 2 seasons. He's posted 400-yard efforts and 5 outings of 15 or more fantasy points. Unfortunately, he was also held below 40 yards in 6 of the 12 contests. So, Puka Nakua's emergence in this offense is definitely a concern for his productivity, but he's still going to be solid. I mean, him and his chemistry with Stafford is still there. He'll put a low-end RB or wide receiver 2 numbers in this PPR formats this year, and he's always going to be a solid pick no matter what. So, all right, so now we got our first QB on the board, which is Josh Allen. Josh Allen coming into his 7th season. Had an amazing year last year when it comes to numbers. Definitely had a lot of turnovers last year, but he still produced. Dude had he had how many touchdowns? Is that 43? I believe. Or 44. So he had a total of 44 touchdowns last year. 15 fucking rushing touchdowns. Crazy. But yes, they are projecting him to have a little bit of dip just because we don't know how their passing attack's going to be this year. He's lost 2 of his favorite targets. They have Keon Coleman coming in. They have Curtis Samuel. They have it's going to be interesting to see how this offense is going to be this year. He's still the QB1 radar, but managers shouldn't be surprised if they see some regression from him. So a little bit risky drafting him, but I mean, he's still going to produce. He's still going to be heavy in this running offense as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays this year, not having the passing attack he's used to. So, and then Jalen Hurts is going next after him. Jalen Hurts had a great year last year. It's coming off his best NFL season, 15 rushing touchdowns. Hurts finished behind only Allen in fantasy points. Weeks 15 through 17 before sitting, or don't blame him, he averaged 21.5 fantasy points. The Eagles lost Jason Kelce, but the offensive line wide receiver options remain top notch. And that tush push is still legal, so that's what really helped him get a lot of touchdowns last year. He has a chance to be number 1, so we'll see what happens with that. And then next up is going to be Anthony Richardson. So Anthony Richardson's got a lot of hype coming in. He looked really good. So football fans are rightfully excited for this dual threat signal caller second season. There's a growing legacy of young QBs thriving as fantasy forces thanks thanks to what deemed to be a cheat code. I mean, he's going to be heavily involved in this rushing attack for sure. He's definitely a big dual threat QB here. Um, they are really thinking he's going to be there. He's definitely a risk drafting this high, but he's got the potential, and so that's why he's going really high on this QB board, going third in QBs. So this is going to be fun to watch. They're having him over Mahomes, which is pretty crazy because Mahomes is next up. Mahomes threw for 4183 yards, 27 TDs. He is definitely going to be up there. I mean, you can't say he's still the top QB in this league when it comes to winning Super Bowls, and I mean, he's shown it. We'll see how this passes. I think he'll definitely. They're saying he's going to have a better year just because the passing attack does look a little bit better. He's got more options. So Marquise Brown, Xavier Worley, and then Rashee Rice coming in. I mean, he's got a lot of weapons to choose from now, according to these projections. So the passing attack will probably be a little bit more deadly this year. But seeing how he produced last year with what he had was pretty insane. So next up we got Debo. Debo looking like he's going to be the second option on the board for wide receivers with the 49ers. Obviously his talent's there. He's a great rusher as well. He appears his rushing attacks, it has dwindled, but he's still going to be a stud. He's still wide receiver 2. He had a lot of great games last year towards, I believe, the end of the year. It seemed like durability is always a concern with him, but he's always got a sky-high ceiling, and that's why he's going up there. We got our second rookie coming in right here, Malik Neighbors, wide receiver-wise, who is looking really good with the Giants. He is definitely probably going to be their clear-cut number one this year. Now, obviously, the issue is Daniel Jones throwing to him, but he's got a lot of potential. I mean, he was a stud at LSU. It's just the Giants' offense. We do not know how it's going to be, so we'll see how he plays. He's projected to have a 1,000-yard year, so his skills are there. He could become a fantasy star, but it's tough to recommend him as more than wide receiver 3 right now just because of this offense the Giants has. They could have not the best year, but we'll see. He could definitely be. He's definitely going to be impact early. I think he's going to have a few good games to start the year, but we'll see. We'll see what happens with this offense. Next up on the board, we got Ramondre Stevenson. So my guy, his 4th season with the Patriots. He's averaging 15.1 touches, 74.3 total yards, 12.4 fantasy points per game. So since he is not sharing the workload with Ezekiel Elliott anymore, we did bring in Antonio Gibson, so that'll be interesting to see how that gets handled with the committee, if there is a committee. But he is obviously a high-end flex option. He's going to be getting the shares of carries. He's going to be getting a heavy workload. But just because our offense is projected last this year, he is a little bit of a risk, but his production will be there. So he will probably, I do see him definitely getting more involved in this passing game just because we do not have any wide receivers. I think he will have a little bit of a better year this year. We'll see what Jared Mayo's got going on, succeeding Bill Belichick as the new head coach. So, but we'll see. It's still projected as a committee. We'll see what happens with that. Next up, we got Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews going 3rd on the tight end list. He's still in his prime playing years, heading into his 7th season with the Ravens. Ravens had an amazing offense last year. Obviously, he did get hurt. He only played 10 games, but he averaged 13.2 points per game. So he's definitely could be number 1 tight end option this year if he stays healthy. He is definitely Lamar Jackson's favorite target other than Zay Flowers. Top 3 player in the position by far. He is going to be really good. He's shown that he can produce, so we'll see what happens. He's had a lot of red zone targets, so he's definitely going to have a great year as long as he stays healthy. And then speaking of the Ravens, Lamar Jackson's next, reigning NFL MVP, had an amazing year last year. I mean, he really was cooking. He's entering his 7th season. Uh, Obviously, you could maybe take him over Anthony Richardson. You could take him over a couple of these other guys going higher up, but he was QB4 in total points. With this rushing attack, I feel like it's going to open up a lot of possibilities for him with Derrick Henry coming in too. So he could have a better rushing year just because obviously Derrick Henry's a concern for defenses. So yeah, Lamar Jackson, he could have an amazing year. We'll see what happens with him. This Ravens team's definitely got an upgrade with Derrick Henry at running back. So this rushing attack is going to be very interesting to watch. So that is the top 50 for the mock draft so far. We are already an hour into this pod, so I think I'm going to go ahead and call it. We'll get into the next 50 in the next pod, but I knew this would take a lot of time talking about all these picks. We'll get into the next 50 on the next pod, but hopefully y'all enjoy this. It's good to be back, guys. This is going to be so fun to draft and see how this season goes. I can't wait to watch some football, man. So hopefully y'all enjoy this pod. I will be back pretty soon to do the next 50, and y'all enjoy the rest of your day, man. Thank y'all for tuning in. Let's fucking go, man. I'm so fucking excited for this year. All right, guys. I will see y'all later.